gentlemen, and welcome to the very first episode of Cedar Point Unlimited. Yes, we are going to do an all Cedar Point show here on COASTER-net. I'm, of course, Andrew Barczyk, joined by, you may remember him from long ago, one Mr. Stephen Lynn. Stephen, welcome to the show.
What's going on? Thanks for having me back. I'm looking forward to doing a number of these shows. Yeah, it's been a really long time since I've been on. I think the last time I was on a show with you and Danny, I think we might have even brought Brian Bass along on the show. We were talking about the Gatekeeper Media Day. So this was all the way back in 2012.
Yeah, that's a while ago there.
It's been quite a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for those of you guys who don't know me, I'm living up and in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I have a season pass to Cedar Point. Cedar Point's my home park. I actually worked for Cedar Point for a summer. I was doing the VIP tour guide, so I was doing those behind the scenes Sunrise Thrills tour, climbing on top of Valraven at 5 a.m. So it was a good time.
Yeah, not a bad gig there, right?
It's a fun industry to be in, but working in it, it takes a toll. Working 10+ hour days, 6 days a week, fun experience. But I realized that I don't want to work in the industry anymore. I'd rather just be a fan of it and attend the parks.
Plus, you wanted to make real money too, right?
Yeah.
So you wanted to make real money.
Now, if I work over 40 hours a week, I get overtime. There, it's slavery.
Expected, yeah. So, and you also now I don't know if I should say this because we'll start getting all those people out.
Oh.
You also worked at the famed Jaga Lake for a little bit as well, right?
I did. It was the Wildwater Kingdom, the water park of it. Yeah, I was a marketing intern there for one summer. I was there the summer, not the summer it closed. They announced their closing, but the year before that.
So almost at the end.
Yeah. Towards the end. I saw the signs coming.
So you're a huge Cedar Point guy, just as I am, and you've been going your whole life just like I am. So I think we're more than qualified to discuss the greatest amusement park, theme park in the world, according to anyone with common sense.
Yeah, I would not call it a theme park, though. It's more of a concrete jungle of steel.
It's got some theme. It's got more theme than I don't like it. Yeah. So anyway, today we have a very interesting topic, and that is Tony Clark put out a blog. Our good friend Tony Clark over at Cedar Point put out a blog and started talking about some of the things that we're going to be coming back to Cedar Point in the next year. We know we've been talking. Danny and I have been talking about this forever. The big 150th anniversary coming up in 2020. So we are expecting something big. But Tony Clark has said that, we're going to bring back some stuff. And he'd love to hear the types of things that we as fans want to see come back to Cedar Point. We as longtime fans want to see come back to Cedar Point. Because they said they're going to be bringing back old nostalgia items. I don't know how far they're going to go with this. But we've created a list here of some stuff that we want to see come back to Cedar Point, to bring it back, to bring back those good old time memories of the point that we had growing up. So, Stephen, I'm going to let you start. What was one of the ideas that you came up with here?
All right. Well, this one I actually just thought of while you were talking. So this is something that's not on our list. It's something you may be unprepared for. But this one, I'd want to bring back the turnpike cars that were taken out when Valraven was put in.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't anything crazy special about those, but they have two antique car rides. There's one right by Raptor, and then they have the one in the back of the park. I don't really see the need for having two of the exact same ride in two different locations. Why not just bring back the turnpike cars? A different type of. You don't see many of those at other parks.
No, those were very unique, and I think that might be part of the reason why they got rid of them, is because they don't have maybe people to supply the body parts for
the generic lawnmower engine that supports the antique car.
Exactly. But it's funny that you say that about having two of the same ride, because I've always thought that if Cedar Point was going to build another huge roller coaster, that the place to put the station would be back in Frontier Town in that antique car area.
Yeah.
And I've drawn it out. I might have even drawn it out on an uncut show somewhere here or there, where you would put the station there, shoot it out, and have it go out, over, like, basically following a very similar path to Magnum. And they did tear down the Sandcastle Suites with nothing to replace it. Most of that land is still completely empty, and you can have the turnaround out there, have it come back into the park. I've always thought that would be the only area left that you could really put something big in. And who's to say we don't see that happen in 2020? Danny and I have been talking about 20 coasters in 2020 for the longest time. Every day that passes, it seems less and less likely that we'll actually achieve that goal. It seems like we're going to hit like 19 in 2020, possibly. Possibly. But the Turnpike cars, if you find a location for them, we saw Kings Island put in the antique cars back again. Might be a nice idea to bring back the Turnpike cars. One thing in that same area that I came up with was that, we've always heard this rumor of an Aquatrax or something like that. Some sort of water ride that ever since Whitewater Landing left, it seems like there's been a hole inside the Cedar Point lineup for a log flume. Shoot the Rapids kind of tried to fill that hole for a little bit of time. That went over like a lead brick, and the boats sunk like a lead brick as well.
Not only sunk, they tipped over. Rolled down the hill backwards.
So Shoot the Rapids was not that. It always boggled my mind why they chose Shoot the Rapids to begin with, because in Aquatrax, Intamin makes roller coasters that use the water boats. We know Mac does that as well. Mac now is working with Cedar Fair down at Carowinds with Copperhead Strike. So I don't know if it's out of the realm of possibility that we see an Aquatrax. You still have that whole Shoot the Rapids water pad. I don't think we'll see a traditional flume ride because no one's really making those anymore. But I think the Aquatrax or something like a Mac, maybe even a Mac Power Splash, might fit the bill back there. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think those would be great additions to that back half of the park, especially if they're trying to keep them around where the other water rides are. It just seems to make sense to kind of keep all of those types of rides together, since everyone's going to be walking around sopping wet. It's kind of my least favorite part of the park to be in a hot summer day when you're just around soaking wet humans.
Seriously, right?
But something, I don't think this would ever happen, but I know that Tony Clark has tweeted out pictures in the past of them testing out different types of trains on the Mine Ride track. Like, I know before, in one off season, they were testing out a Gemini train on the track. Just I'm the reasoning, I don't know. I'm guessing just the restraints are more comfortable than sharing a massive bar. But I think one thing that could be pretty cool if they were to ever do something like that. I mean, they revamped Mean Streak into an RMC, so maybe they could revamp Mine Ride and keep a similar layout to what it has, but because it takes that drop down over the lagoon, they could turn the lagoon into some sort of splashdown and kind of get your Aquatrax mixed in with, and it still has that family aspect ride with Mine Ride for the smaller.
Well, what's interesting about Mine Ride too is that they made this whole teaser campaign over this year was talking about Mine Ride and bringing back stuff, and we really haven't gotten a definitive answer as to what this all means yet. That we know Mine Ride's celebrating an anniversary next season. Tony Clark in this blog that we're talking about talked about repainting the ride sign on the side of the building a little bit, but there was a whole lot of speculation going on as to what they were going to do with Mine Ride, and those restraints are real tough for people, especially since it's a family ride. We know in America people are getting a little bit bigger, and those rides get real tough to put some bigger people on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a very thick person. I'm 6 feet tall, but a lot of times I'm the tallest person in the car, and I'm just smashed in there, and it's extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I do remember those pictures where they were testing the Gemini cars on there, and they just didn't work out. And that was also because they had those extra trains from Gemini too, where they were at one point they were running 3 trains on each side. Obviously, they're not even close to that anymore with Gemini. So you wonder what's going to, a lot of people have said that they would tear down Mine Ride, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think there's a lot more areas of space that you can focus on. I sure hope they don't, because that's one of the things that I know we're not really going to get into, but the lack of overall family roller coasters, I think, that you've torn out Wildcat, you've torn out Disaster Transport, if you count that as a roller coaster. I do not. But, you've torn out all these family type rides. To tear out Mine Ride now would just be furthering, piling on. And then everyone talks about Iron Dragon with how long does that ride have?
Yeah.
So that would be a real sad thing to see Mine Ride go. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to see the opposite and see some more life put into it. Hopefully they can figure out those restraints a little bit, because those things are
really, they could even just get entirely new trains if they had to. I mean,
well, you got Vekoma building trains that run basically the same track. I'm sure you could find something to fit that there's probably plenty of mine cars out there, because most of the modern aero mine cars too have the newer style trains with the automatic restraints, the individual lap bars. So it would be pretty cool to see something like that happen on Mine Ride. Another one I came up with, you might be a little too young for this, but the Boathouse. The Boathouse was a restaurant where you may now know as Famous Dave's sits.
Yep, I know it as Famous Dave's. I can't say I've ever heard of the Boathouse before. So
really, because the Boathouse was still around, I think, in the early 2000s. So in the early 2000s, Boathouse was still back there, but Boathouse suffered. It was always a packed house there because people would go for a fine dinner. It's a sit-down restaurant out on the lake. But it did suffer from not having a whole lot of, advertisement. Like Famous Dave's today, there's not a whole lot of advertisement in the park to get people out there. People don't know it's there. When the Boathouse was there, though, this was also before Cedar Point had all these other restaurants, too, where Johnny Rockets wasn't there yet. You had the Silver Dollar Cafe instead of Chicky and Pete's, what they call it now. When I was there back in the day, it was called Macaroni's and not Melt. Macaroni's was the first name that I saw, and then it turned into Joe Cool Cafe, and now it, of course, is Melt now. So you had a handful of restaurants. So the Boathouse was one of those places that you could sit down, have a good meal, and it was a barbecue place, too, where they actually served the famous Montgomery Inn barbecue ribs that you get down from Cincinnati. I still think to this day that they are some of the best ribs I've ever had in my life at the Boathouse. And I was very disappointed when Famous Dave's came in, because I think Famous Dave's is complete crap.
See, now I don't mind Famous Dave's that much. I think it's just, I really like the spicy sauces. They have that Devil's Spit barbecue sauce. Every year I go, I probably pick up about 5 bottles of that, and it's sitting in my fridge downstairs now. I put that stuff on everything. Basically, I use it like Frank's Red Hot. It's oh my goodness, no. Whatever you can put sauce on, it goes on. But I mean, we have Witch's Wheel going away, and I mean that opens up a nice area where potentially they could put in some type of restaurant like the Boathouse you're talking about. And I mean, I've never experienced it before, and if it is better than Famous Dave's, then it's probably a pretty okay place.
And I have heard that rumor that through the grapevine, people have said that that the area by Witch's Wheel is going to be used for some sort of restaurant. I've heard barbecue, but having Famous Dave's there already, having put the place in by Maverick this year with the pulled pork and stuff, I find it interesting that they would go to barbecue again. However, I will say this, the barbecue place out on the boardwalk at Knott's Berry Farm is one of the best restaurants. My last visit to Knott's Berry Farm, everyone talks about the chicken dinner restaurant at Knott's Berry, that it is out of this world amazing. But I will say, I think my meal at the Boardwalk Barbecue inside the park at Knott's was far better than my chicken dinner. That barbecue was fantastic. They had a wonderful selection of barbecue sauces there. So if they did something like that over by Witch's Wheel, it would fit that theme, because you already have that kind of quasi boardwalk feel, with Monster and the gliders and Pipe Scream.
Plus, it's leading straight out into the Cedar Point boardwalk. So
absolutely,
you're on the boardwalk right next to the water park.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, there's no real sit-down restaurant anywhere near that area of the park. The closest sit-down restaurant is either Melt by the other exit to the beach, or you'd have to go all the way to, like, the Maverick area, and you got Chick-fil-A, you've got the
Yeah.
barbecue place.
And
So
even
there's,
with that, it's not necessarily a sit-down restaurant. It's kind of
like,
get in line and hopefully you find a seat that opens up. It's not like
absolutely,
a
like,
service type restaurant.
yeah, the only places with waiters and waitresses are Melt and Chicky and Pete's and Johnny Rockets now. So, like, I think that would be a great idea to put there. I hated seeing Witch's Wheel go. I was not a fan of that decision to
See,
remove it.
I'm not a spinning ride person. Those things,
Oh,
oh,
man.
those will
I
ruin my day.
I
But
absolutely loved Witch's Wheel. So and my last ride on Witch's Wheel, it actually broke. I thought I was gonna die, um, because we start spinning, we start moving, crawling upwards to our vertical position, and you just hear something click, and you can feel the wheel slowing down. And centripetal force actually keeps those cars kind of upright. So as you
and
start
you
slowing
don't even wear
down,
a seatbelt in that, do you? Aren't you
there's
just
no
kind of like you're
no
just
you're
sitting in that little
yeah, you're just in the
crap?
cage. So it started rocking back and forth. And I'm like, oh, hell, if this thing stops on this vertical apex, then you're going to fall down on the top of that car. Luckily, it started slowly creeping back down. But you could tell that was my last ride on it. I got a nice broken ride and almost died. So that was fun.
And maybe that's exactly why they're getting rid of it. They're starting to realize, you know what? It's reaching the end of life, and there's just not many parts to keep this thing
Having
going.
heard the write-ups and their expletives behind the booth, I can assure you that's probably why they're getting rid of it. Yeah, so that's one of those things where probably a food restaurant back there would fit in real nicely, and maybe at Winter Chill Out somewhere you're going to be in a few months here. Maybe they'll actually reveal that, because they're not going to leave that area open for very long, I don't think.
It is right across from the new Frontier, whatever, that Frontier experience. So my first guess would be it has something to do with that, but we'll just wait and see.
We shall see, right? So it's your turn for an idea. What else you got here?
All right. This is probably when Cedar Point announced that this wasn't coming back for Halloween's, I was devastated. My favorite haunt ever was Happy Jack's Toy Factory. And I would love to have not a Happy Jack's, not a haunt named Happy Jack's. I want the same layout, the same everything. It doesn't have to be inside of a disaster transport, but the way that haunt was set up, it was absolutely amazing. They're just the theming inside of it, the way that they would have characters hiding within stuffed animals and game type scenario things. It was just, I go to haunt now, and I mean, another thing I didn't mention earlier in our introductions was I actually worked in Blood on the Bayou at Cedar Point one summer.
Okay.
So between working in the haunts and going multiple times a year, I'm used to all of the scares that happen. That was a haunt that every single time I go in, I'd get a solid jump scare out of it. And I'd actually, I'd flinch, and it was just great.
Like that was I only went through a handful of times through Happy Jack's. But that was really an outstanding haunt. And I'm really surprised. I've been through other versions of Happy Jack's at other parks. The one that jumps out to my mind right away was Carowinds. They did one called Defects, and it was basically the same idea, but just done in a completely different style. Didn't have the same feel. It was a lot almost like darker and less cool. But I'll tell you what, Happy Jack's had everything. Like, you had the stuffed animals, you had I remember the old 80s action figure room that I thought was really cool. And then you had the Barbie room where they would, you had the people dressing, you had some of them as mannequins and some of them as like pretending to be Barbies, and they pop out at you. Like, there were so many unique and cool ideas in there that I'm really surprised they haven't tried to bring that back. I feel like the haunts, there's a lot of haunts I want to see come back.
Yeah.
Like, the best scare zone they ever had was Fear Fair. Like, that thing, and they don't do anything in that section now that it used to be.
It's just a closed off picnic area for hopeful catered groups. They have such a nice pavilion by the beach now that no one's going to want to use that other one that's by Blue Streak. It's you know, in a loud area. It's right by Raptor. It's just a less appealing area. Why? I don't
It's
get
like
it.
perfect for a haunt because they force you in. It was sort of maze-like. It wasn't like you had to wait in line. It was just an open area but you had to find your way through it, and it forced you to go through certain areas. And it was just really well done. The theming was good. The walls were cool. The fog sat in there every single night because you had the roofed pavilion over you.
And they had all those like the vine. I don't know the canvas type of
like
vine
the camo, mesh looking stuff.
Yep.
It was just really well done. Like those two haunts, and I loved Club Blood, and I miss Club Blood, but that's me. Not a lot of people like that one.
I did like that, but I think that is better than Zombie High School. There's cool parts of Zombie High School.
It just seems like a lot of their haunts have become tired. They haven't really changed them up very much. Like they added in that blackout haunt. I don't even go in that crap. I think blackout haunts to me are a complete waste of space.
It was really cool the very first time I went in it, but after that it's like, all right, it's dark. If I want to do this, I can go turn the lights off in my basement and set up a bunch of obstacles, and I can do that for free.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's just like I don't understand it. And it seems like they're investing more in the kids section of the haunt, in the pumpkin spectacular. And that's fine if that's where you feel your money is. But I really like to see just not only Happy Jack, but maybe an overall return to haunt for the entire event.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's weird about that is, it used to just be called Halloweenkends, and now they took the haunt name because it's supposedly supposed to be, more intense, more scarier. And to me, it's not. Just the overall decorations in the park are more family oriented, which it's fine, but at the same time, you could still have kept all of these other items and statues around the park. I remember, just before the show, we were just quickly talking, you were showing me pictures of, a lot of the old things that used to be there, and they don't exist anymore. And it just added such an eerie Halloween feel.
Like everything's become cutesy with the pumpkins on the front gate, underneath Gatekeeper, with the huge skeletons that they added in all the parks this year, not just Cedar Point. Everything's become kind of cutesy and not so much scary.
Yeah.
And if that's the road you want to go down, that's cool. But I still think you need to appease some of those other people coming in as well. Hopefully we'll see what happens. Here's one for you that I didn't mention earlier. This one's going to go out there for Danny Miller. That is to bring back the game Fascination. I don't know if you remember this, but there is a Fascination parlor. It was where Johnny Rockets currently sits.
Is this the game where you have like balls and you
roll
them into different
and they
like a bowling setup in it?
Yeah. And they light up on the big screen. There is actually a Fascination board for this year at least it was there. I don't know if it was there last year. There's a Fascination board inside the Pagoda gift shop that you could actually look at it. A lot of people just assumed it was just like a random game, but that was Fascination. And you'd have a number of these different stations set up inside this Fascination parlor, and you would play. You'd have to pay for each round. You'd play, and the first one to get, whatever. It's kind of like bingo where you play like a line or a diagonal.
Yeah. Like Connect Four.
Yeah, exactly. And whoever was to get the first, line or whatever would win the game. I played a handful of times, and then you would have like this on the back wall was the coolest because it was kind of like your old school arcade where you'd have all the prizes on the back wall that you could go exchange your tickets to go get some prizes. So I'd love to see, and you only need like a small area, a small little building. Maybe that's what they're putting over by Witch's Wheel. Maybe they're doing a Fascination part.
It would be cool just in general if that whole game room area I haven't been there to actually play games in years. The only time I go in there is if it's pouring, and that just happens to be the closest shelter I can get to.
And they did remove a whole lot of stuff out of there this year. At the end of the year, I was told that they took out a whole lot of stuff. So maybe you could take a whole part of that Coliseum and turn it into a Fascination parlor, probably.
That is possible.
That would be really cool. I know Danny Miller would be all for that. Danny Miller, who hates everything.
Yeah.
At Cedar Point would be all for Fascination. So I think it'd be awesome to bring that back. What's another one you got? We got a
All right.
few more
You
here.
bringing up all of those games possibly coming out of the game room that could open up a large space for a dark ride. On my list, I never got to experience this, but I've seen very old VHS type videos of the pirate ride. They bring out some of the props for Halloween weekends and put them around the old building, which is now occupied by a little kids haunted house. It's like
the haunting of
magical house of
Boo Hill.
Boo Hill, there it is.
Boo Hill.
But yeah, I mean, there's Cedar Point's been rumored to get a dark ride pretty much every year.
Probably since that show, the last show you were on. I think you were talking dark ride.
I think I was talking dark ride. And
oh my God.
It'll happen eventually.
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 Yeah. I will say I am old enough to say that I have been on a number of times on the pirate ride. So I got a trip through that. I'll tell you what, as a kid, that was some scary stuff. I'll tell you what, it was all in black light and you'd get in there. I hated going on that ride. Like, I was a kid at the time, you know. It was scary. So but that's something like that. You know, you see people putting money, you see Six Flags putting money into things like Justice League. Funny story. Here's a funny story for you, Stephen Lynn. When I was at the Great America Justice League Media Day, do you know who I met there?
Oh, if I could take a wild guess, you met Batman.
No. Well, he was there. I met Batman. I met someone better than Batman. I met Tony Clark at that event.
No way.
He was at the Six Flags Great America Media Day for Justice League. And I said to him, I said, hey, you know,
what is this?
Yeah, what is this? This is pretty cool, right? So you see those Justice Leagues that have been wildly popular still hold a line no matter where you look. The Trio Tech dark rides that we saw at Canada's Wonderland and at Knott's, I don't feel have had the same reception as the Justice League stuff.
It's also different, though, because I feel like Justice League, everyone knows those superheroes. No one knows what the heck is in the Canada's Wonderland mountain.
Seriously. Those stories just – and it seemed like Cedar Fair was on the path to putting one of those into every park, and they stopped at Knott's and haven't looked back. I know the one at Knott's has a lot of maintenance issues that you can go on. When I was there, like the glasses weren't lined up and stuff. It was a mess. But then you look down at Fiesta, Texas, and what they're doing is they had a Scooby-Doo haunt. They lost the Scooby-Doo IP, and for the last year, they have been refurbishing it themselves. And I know Texas Thrill Seekers just took a tour through it and posted some pictures. And I'll tell you what, it looks really legit. Like you think that, you know, it looks like a classic Sally dark ride. Like it's not anything like Justice League or anything.
Yeah.
But the amount of detail that they put into it for it being done in-house is really, really impressive. So I'd love to see some sort of shooter dark ride come to Cedar Point. The pirate ride was just an experience. You just rode through it. No shooting aspect, but I think a shooter aspect interactive thing would be super cool. You know, I've always said that I think the ticket is to bring back Disaster Transport and to reignite that story and have it like when they were doing the Trio Tech stuff. I said, why couldn't you have it be a space themed, you know, dark ride and bring back Disaster Transport, make the cars kind of with the white and the, you know, the triangular designs, do a whole little pre-show, have them go through and, you know, you're traveling to Alaska again or something. You know,
I think what would make or break the dark ride is the theme of it. Like, it's easy for Six Flags, it's easy for Disney, it's easy for Universal because they own all of those licenses for the super popular stuff. I mean, for Cedar Point to have to create something on their own and have it become really popular, I feel like that would be really difficult for them to do. And I feel like they're trying really hard to do it, though. I mean, they have that, I don't even know what the app is called, that Battle for Cedar Point, where they're creating all of these characters. Maybe it is potentially leading those characters into some type of dark ride.
And those three things, like those things would be the three ways I would go. Disaster Transport to bring back Pirate Ride, or I really like that idea, the Battle for Cedar Point, because those characters, they're creating this whole intricate story. And, you know, Frontier Town has a lot of open space back there that you could easily find some area to put in some building somewhere, and put in, you know, this highly themed dark ride, which I think would be really cool.
And that's something, if it's, especially if it's one of those video shooter interactive type ones with the screens, that's something that you have the building, you have all of the mechanics to it. You just need, you know, you could have, every couple of years, you could have whatever company is doing your artwork or the design for it, update it, make something new. As you know, Steel Vengeance came in this year, they could have added the Steel Vengeance characters. As a new ride comes in the next few years, they can add those characters to the story.
And you look at, like, Disney does that all the time. Disney adds in, you know, different overlays to, you know, to add in their movies. You saw Johnny Depp being added to Pirates. You know, they're talking about maybe changing the, you know, the river tour in Mexico to maybe a Coco theme. So you see that happen all the time, to overlay these different characters. And maybe you don't need that much of a refurbishment, but just like what they did with Pirates, you add Johnny Depp in, and there he is. There he's part of the story again. So I think a dark ride is something that is sorely missing from Cedar Point. That's
we've been talking about it for about eight years.
Yeah, seriously, right? And there's one other thing that's sorely missing from Cedar Point, but we'll get to that later. But what's another thing that you have?
Let's see. Another one that I have. We did Happy Jacks. We did the Log Flume. This one's kind of a smaller, just one of the little details of the park. I don't know if you remember, but maybe about 5 to 7 years ago, they had all of these nighttime lights through the Frontier Trail. It wasn't something you're going to go to Cedar Point for. It wasn't something that, you know, you're maybe the first time you go experience it, you'll go out of your way to see what's up with it. But if you're ending your night in the back of the park and need to make the walk back all the way up to the front, just going through Frontier Trail is it was a nice surprise to see all of these lights timed with music, and just, it was like Christmas without the Christmas theme.
Yeah, it was really nice back there too. And I think the issue became the maintenance of it. Is they wanted to just leave it up all the time and not take them down, even for the winter. And you know how Ohio gets. Leaving up Christmas lights all year round probably isn't the most sane of ideas.
I mean, even my Christmas lights outside right now, I already got like 3 trees out, and they've been up for about a week. So I can't like when you're at a park and people are expecting to see lights, you know, you can't have that happen.
But it was a really cool experience back there. They've tried to do it a little bit recently by adding like little lights here and there. But I think the full nighttime experience with the music, they also brought out those Charlie Brown floats.
I forgot
to put
about
in the
those.
middle. So those were kind of cool too. Maybe, you know, that adds to the maintenance side of it, where you got to bring those out every night instead of just flipping a switch.
Yeah,
but it made
probably
it
had
feel,
to close off portions of that trail while you're bringing those floats out. I mean, they took up it's not a wide path, and those were pretty big floats. So
they were huge. They were
safety
big.
of people while getting all those together was probably an issue too.
But you don't need that. Like that's you know, those were the extras. I think just having the lights, having the music was a really cool idea. We saw that expand to a lot of these other parks, and now we see it with a lot of these parks during Christmas time now. You know, all the Six Flags now have the holiday in the park. Winterfest is huge, and everyone talks about the lights. Well, that was done on Frontier Trail and other places, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, a long time ago. It really made that feel more special. The other thing you had brought up, there is one other thing, and that's paddle wheel excursion. Right?
Good old paddle wheel.
And a lot of people thought this was coming back with all of the rumors circulating Cedar Point this year, especially towards the end of the season. A lot of people thought, well, paddle wheel's coming back, and that ended up not being the case. That they're doing this new quasi-experience theatrical thing out on Millennium Island. That might be cool. We don't know what it is yet.
If I haven't seen anything, when I read what it's about and what I hear that it's about, it's similar to the, you know, like the Diagon Alley type of stuff that's in Disney or Universal, where, you know, kind of have like an interactive.
I think it's even more. It's even more in depth than that, because I saw this in action. Knott's Berry did Ghost Town Alive. And basically what they did out there was you went to one area, you got like a sheet that showed you different missions you could do. And you would go to the different places, and let's say I go to the post office, and I go to the post office, there's an actor there who does a whole spiel for me and my family or me and my group, and he would give me a package, and he would say, okay, go take this there. So it was a whole series of events that you would go here, then go here, then go here. And
So almost like an outdoor escape room type of thing where
yeah, kind of like, and not nearly as much of like, hey, I got to think my way out of this. It was just like, hey, go pretend as if you were living in Ghost Town at Knott's Berry Farm and go be one of the residents. Like if I went to the post office, you'd be like, hey, can you go take this box over to this other guy or something? So it's a very theatrical, experiential thing. And this is where theme parks should be going. We see this out at Evermore Park as well, out in Utah, where their whole park is all interactive, live interactive theater. And it seems like a really cool thing. Got a lot of press the last few months out there. And it seems like the Cedar Point one's going to use that and then also use some physical challenges in there as well. So it should be interesting to see what happens, but that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, we got a little off track.
We're talking about paddle wheel.
Paddle wheel.
So you were a big, I enjoyed paddle wheel. My mom loved paddle wheel. What did you like about paddle wheel though?
I liked the fact that it was something that you can do in the middle of the day or towards the end of the day when all the lines are really long, it's really hot outside, and you just want to sit down. And you don't want to just sit on a bench. You want to sit and, just kind of do something. And right now, all there is to do, you got the sky ride, which I like the sky ride. Who doesn't like the sky ride?
But you're going back and forth.
You're going back and forth. And then you've got the train.
Yeah. And you can ride the train forever, but
yes. I've taken several laps on a train after a tiring day, morning. But paddle wheel wasn't even that. I mean, they had the corny jokes. It was just cool having it was just an interesting ride. It was from basically a original Cedar Point, just
like it had that old school feel to it. The corny jokes, it's a takeoff of Jungle Cruise at Disney, but you know what? This one, it felt more authentic. You were on a real boat at some level. Yeah. You were like, they were actually, driving the boat or, skippering the boat around. I had the opportunity to be on the last boat of Paddle Wheel Excursion way back when it closed up. And it was skippered by the one, the only, Mr. Dick Kinzel.
Yeah.
So that was a fun time. A very, very cool evening. It was an auction for charity. To be on that last boat out and have Dick Kinzel as the skipper was pretty cool. But like you said, it's once again something that the whole family could do together. Where mom, dad, grandma, kid, baby, you can all sit on that boat and you can all listen to the corny jokes together and have a good time for about 5 to 10 minutes or however long it was. But it's just something that's missing, that family aspect that maybe this new experience will kind of have to, but I don't know. Like it depends on how much physical activity, because they're making me climb walls.
I like paddle wheel because I got to sit down and do nothing.
Yes, I don't want to have to work for stuff. Like you said, in the middle of the day, I want to sit somewhere like on the train, go for a long ride, like 6 or 7 laps, and have a good time. But yeah, so we'll see how this turns out. I'm interested to see if it's something that you do once or twice or do multiple times because it's that much fun.
It would depend on how different it is, if there's different experiences each time you do it, or if it's going to be the same.
It does sound like there's going to be elements we all have limited information at this point, but it does sound like there's going to be like a choose your own path kind of style to it, which would be really cool, I think, and make people want to do it over to discover all the nuances of what's going on there. And then I think the last thing we're going to talk about here tonight is the big one, the big thing that Cedar Point is obviously missing, maybe the thing that they've always been missing, even though Mean Streak was there. They've always really been missing that really outstanding wood roller coaster, that for a park that you can have the best steel coasters anywhere in the world combined into one small area that you have the best two steel coasters 100 yards from each other right now in Steel Vengeance and Maverick. That you don't have a wood coaster to speak of. Blue Streak's a fine coaster, a great classic coaster, but not one that people are going to talk about and rank. And I think that's what they need. And I would love to see something like the Cedar Point Cyclone to make a return, a wood coaster on the beach. They've cleared out that whole area. So all those people that were saying that fire and ice stage was permanent, guess what, folks? It's gone already. If you were there during Haunt, they basically took everything out. There's a whole pad of concrete there now, and it seems like they're going to start pouring footers tomorrow. If you ask
Hopefully.
But I'd love to see a wood coaster out there on the beach. I think it would look fantastic. Would be the one thing that Cedar Point is missing in my book.
If they do put one out there, though, I think they would have to. It would have to be a pretty big project, not just a small. It would have to be like something Mystic Timbers caliber, not just a small, traditional boardwalk wooden roller coaster.
I think what you're going to see is I think Calypso or Tiki Twirl. I think that's going to go somewhere else or completely gone. And then you open up that whole tract of land over there. People don't realize like how much land that is. Plus, I don't know how far you go out on the beach. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. You can go all the way up and down. You can maybe even encircle the giant wheel. Some people have said that, Wicked Twister isn't long for Cedar Point either.
Maybe they can use it to block off some of the wind for Windseeker so it can actually run in the wind.
So it can actually run in the wind. I'll tell you what, ever since they took down Disaster Transport, the wind tunnel at Cedar Point has been horrendous.
Especially over in that section.
Like, as ugly as Disaster Transport was, it actually served a very big purpose to cut down on the wind. And it's just been wreaking havoc with, you can feel like it's a lot windier all the way over by Valraven because the wind just cuts right through the entire peninsula.
I'll be in line for Gatekeeper, and you'll see the lights in the station just go swinging back and forth, back and forth. And it's not even like, it's not like there's even a storm coming through. It's just the breeze from the lake. It's just normal wind that was all blocked before.
Yeah, and I think maybe putting a wood coaster out there would help with that because you have a very dense structure with the wood coaster, so maybe it would help with the wind issue. And I think just the aesthetics of it. A lot of people have said maybe you put a wood coaster, over where Shoot the Rapids used to be. Yeah, I guess so. Frontier Fling, are they going to keep that there? I don't know. You could use that area for a wood coaster. I personally like it on the beach. You want to talk about Cedar Point history. The Cedar Point Cyclone is something that people talk about all the time, and one of those coasters that people would love to ride. And here you go. Here's your opportunity to bring back that same, beach theme, an old boardwalk, roller coaster on the beach out there. I think it'd be awesome.
I think another place they could put it, they're taking out those red employee dorms, and I don't think they're going to put any rides over there because there's the boat docks, there's Famous Dave's, but I think they can move. So what people who have never worked at Cedar Point probably don't realize this, inside where the Hex Haunted House is, over in there, it's just an employee parking lot for a lot of the full-time employees. And then there's also the cash office where all the different locations get their cash in the mornings. I feel like they could move that whole office, that games warehouse, where the games warehouse is also over there, I'm pretty sure. They can move all of that to where those red employee dorms are. They can rebuild the Cedar Point HR office all over in that area. So you have, your marketing and corporate office over by the water tower, and then you have the rest of your main offices over there. And that would open up a huge area where that parking lot is to just
Well, it's also interesting that they've purchased a whole bunch of land just recently. And a lot of people said that they're going to build new dorms offsite. But you could also put in things like, office space. There's a whole lot of things that you can rebuild offsite. And because the Cedar Point Peninsula real estate is so valuable that that people have been saying for years, oh, they're running out of space. They still find space. They've never not run out of,
it just magically appears. Like, you think they run out of space and like, here's a big block of land. We're going to put something there.
Yeah, circle that. Oh, that's what we're going to do. They find space. But at some point that is valuable real estate. You want to maximize, and if you can move stuff off site, then absolutely that's what you want to do. And those red dorms are completely terrible. Oh my God.
When I stayed there, I luckily didn't have to go in those ones, but I have been in there. They are, I don't know how they're standing, honestly.
They look like some of the oldest structures in the park right now. So, but it's a bad time. But I would love a wood coaster on the beach, a wood coaster anywhere in the park, a world-class wood coaster, I think is the one thing. I think that's what we're going to actually get for the 150th anniversary. We have the Kings Island Giga rumors. I think it's very possible that we see Cedar Point get a wood coaster in 2020. I think that
would be a good addition for 2020. I would personally love to see a B&M Giga at Cedar Point just because they're fun.
Giga. No. You want higher. You want a 400, a 500 foot coaster. Let's break some records. This is Cedar Point. This isn't Kings Island. Who gives a crap about a Giga?
But with that, I think a wood coaster would be a great addition for 150 years because you started the roller coasters with wood, and then you're celebrating a huge year milestone with kind of something that started your park with the wooden coasters.
Absolutely. So I think that's going to wrap us up here for tonight. We've talked a lot here, so hopefully you enjoyed this. So we're going to do a lot of Cedar Point. Danny doesn't like Cedar Point. I don't know. Danny's not the Cedar Point guy. So whenever we need, in-depth, hardcore Cedar Point discussion, Stephen Lynn's our guy. So we're gonna be doing this a lot more often, especially probably right after Winter Chill Out too. Talk about all the things that are revealed there, and to talk about the great things that are going to be happening in the next few years. Because this is an exciting time for Cedar Point, probably the most exciting time I've ever been a part of. With the big 150th anniversary coming up. So I think
we're about to have a whole year of teasers up to it, hopefully.
Oh, man, you thought the teasers were bad before. We haven't even started yet, I feel. We're gonna get so in-depth with this. So it's. I
bet they start before opening day even.
Start them at Winter Chill Outs. Start putting teasers up in the park. So, as always, thank you for joining us here on the first episode of Cedar Point Unlimited. I am, of course, Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Steve Lynn from Cleveland, Ohio.
Right.
And we will see you next time.
See ya.